Before we get into it, though, Andy, tell the folks at home, what is Cinemacon? Is that in the United States? Where does this happen? What is this thing?
Yeah, so Cinemacon is the annual convention of big film studios, which takes place in Las Vegas every year. All the big studios, Sony, Warner Brothers, Universal, and Amazon MGM. They do presentations, talk about their upcoming film slates, new projects, more information on existing projects, those kinds of things. Usually there's some trailers, not necessarily shown to the internet, rather, but just the people going there. And it's so funny because the trades are like, oh, they have to sit and try and describe what happens in these trailers that we don't actually get to see. But it's a big deal. It's when, again, a lot of films are either announced or more information is learned. So we got a lot of announcements in just the last few days. We're going to get into it.
That's right. We got the top 5 best stories for y'all. We're not going to go through the whole thing. We're just going to get to the goods, the things you want to keep up with. First things first, we got it up on screen if you're watching us live. The Beatles biopics from Sam Mendes. We got the cast of the 4 Beatles. We got a release date. It's weird, man. It's really odd. Let's get into it, though. Andy, who's playing the Beatles? Who are we going to have? Who's playing the almighty Beatles in the Beatles biopics?
It's our up-and-coming white guys that we all love. Paul Mescal as Paul McCartney, Harris Dickinson as John Lennon, Joseph Quinn as George Harrison, and Barry Keoghan as Ringo Starr. And this isn't going to be out for a while. This is coming out April 2028. But they're planning right now to release all 4 films. This is going to be 4 separate movies about each person. They're going to release all 4 films in 1 month, all in that month, which is a really bizarre strategy. They're calling it like a bingeable experience. I'm not real sure if that's going to work or if they're actually going to do that, because logistically that doesn't seem real possible, but that's the story.
Yeah, Sam Mendes spoke on this, director. Quote, "We're not just making one film about the Beatles, we're making 4. He said, perhaps this is a chance to understand them a little more deeply. Perhaps y'all don't have a plan. That's what I think. I think they don't know what they're doing. I think they have a loose idea of making multiple features with these guys. They got them signed up for a multi-picture deal. I'm sure they got access to the Beatles library. That's supposed to be a thing here. This is first time access to all these songs for a biopic that other people haven't had access to. That's great. But dude, what do you mean 4 movies in a month? How's that even gonna work? 4 movies in April? What are you gonna have them down the Cineplex, 4 screens? Are you gonna do 1 a week? What about small screens, right? Like small screen theaters. The one I used to work at way back in high school only had 10 screens. So what do you just get them like John and Ringo, and then they got to go down the street to AMC for George and Paul? What? It doesn't defies logic, boggles the mind. But Sony seems confident. They were talking about how this is a bingeable model, and they want to try something new and pioneer something different in the spirit of the greatest band ever, they said, or something like that. I'm not so sure. I'm a skeptic. What do you think, Andy?
I mean, we know how hard it is to get people into the theater, into the cinema. It's hard to get people to go 1 time a month. How are you going to get people to go to 4 movies, which are all about the same subject? Because it's basically the same story, but told from different perspectives in a kind of Rashomon sort of way. Yeah. I just don't know how you get people to the theater that much. This sounds like it would be a brilliant streaming spectacle event, but it's a terrible theatrical strategy, I think.
Yeah, I do think the cast is solid. Worth mentioning, there were some rumors about this way back in February. I rattled off a tweet about it. 100% correct, by the way. The 4 that I heard were going to be it are it. So it turns out, if you're listening to Off Script, you're following us on Twitter, you're getting movie news months ahead, man. Fingers on the pulse. But we got to move on. Next story. Spider-Man 4 has a title. Tom Holland is in it. What is this movie going to be, Andy?
So, yes, we got a title reveal, Spider-Man 4, Brand New Day. Continuing the trend of real boring Spider-Man titles, along with Far From Home, No Way Home, Beyond Home. I can't remember them all. They all mixed together. Yes. But this is actually slated for next summer 2026, July 31st, 2026. So late in the summer. This is going to take place between the 2 Avengers films that are coming out. It's also based on an existing comic storyline, which kind of where we left off in the last Spider-Man film. Everyone forgets who Spider-Man is, and he kind of has to start over from the beginning, like his marriage. Even his wife forgets him. So it's going to be interesting how we kind of tie this back together. We know Jacob Batalon is returning as his best friend Ned. Don't know if we're gonna get Zendaya. I think she might be done with these. Man, she got into Marvel at the right time, and she got out at the right time. So I don't think she's coming back.
I remember going to the theater when that third Spider-Man film came out and being astounded at the number of cars in the parking lot because we were rolling off of COVID. And yeah, Top Gun had come out and had done well. I couldn't believe how many people were coming out for the new Spider-Man feature. And since that time, like as that movie ended, it ended in a really great spot for the character. Yeah, Peter Parker is all but forgotten in his universe. Fresh slate, blank page. He's going to college. He's still got spider powers, but nobody knows his identity. It's great. You could go anywhere. You could do Gwen Stacy. You could cast somebody new, right? So a lot of potential here. But also, Tom Holland ain't getting any younger, man. Like, he can't do many more of these movies. I bet they got him on like a 3-picture deal, probably, with some Avengers appearances and a couple other, Marvel cameos he'll make and some stuff. And then he's out. Like, he can't do much more. He obviously wants to move on. He has had trouble getting going. He's done some Netflix projects, which are good, but he hasn't really popped off the screen. He did the Cherry with Apple TV. Right now, he's doing Odyssey with Nolan, which I'm convinced he has to be good in. I don't think Christopher Nolan will put a bad performance on the screen, especially in the middle of his movie. So I think he'll be great in that. He'll probably hit in Spider-Man, but they're going to have to hand this off in the next 5 or 10 years, right? Like, this can't keep going.
Yeah, Spider-Man is famously a teenager, and Tom Holland's going to be on his second mortgage or second marriage soon. You gotta. It's a young role, and he's not getting any younger. He'll probably be in the next 2 Avengers film and his own Spider-Man film, but I don't see him really going past that. Again, they got to hand it off, and this has been the real struggle with Hollywood. It's like Wolverine, like they cannot cast new X-Men to save their lives. And yeah, the nostalgia is great, but like you can't keep going another 10 years off that.
No. Another story out of the superhero space, out of the Cinemacon. For the webheads out there, dude, this is a bummer. We got news about the next animated Spider-Man, the Beyond the Spider-Verse one with Miles Morales, with the sick animation. You remember those movies? Yeah, well, the third one's coming, but you're gonna have to wait for it. What is this about, Andy? This is a bummer. This is a little letdown.
So if you remember in 2023, I can't remember. Across the Spider-Verse, the second one. Again, they got to work on these titles. Across the Spider-Verse was like my second favorite movie of the year. Really loved it. Ends on a big cliffhanger, and it also said Beyond the Spider-Verse coming spring 2024, which seemed impossible. And lo and behold, we got an announcement that the third Spider-Verse movie, Beyond the Spider-Verse, is coming in 2027, which means they have not even started it. They don't even have a script yet. No one's recorded voice lines. Shamik Moore keeps crashing out online. So it's just like, it's so disappointing. It will have taken 9 years to make 3 movies. It's just like, what are we doing? And it was a hit. It was a huge hit for Sony. So I don't know why they didn't just greenlight it right away. Luckily, it's animated, so you don't have to age down the cast or anything like that. But it's a big bummer that we're gonna have to wait. At least another 2 years to see this.
This is a huge L from Sony, like all around. There was so much smoke around that last Spider-Man movie. I saw GIFs from that. I saw clips from that movie for months. People were recording in the theater and posting on Twitter live, like just to be like, look at this incredible sequence. Check out this incredible animation. Fantastic storytelling. You got to get the 4K. Everybody was nuts about this movies. They teased a 2024 release and then nothing. They fumbled. Not only did they fumble, they didn't even plan a fumble. They didn't even know. They didn't even have a bus to get home from the game. Like, they had no plan. And they promised everybody that they did. It's such a letdown, dude. Like, I hope the next one has the same head of steam that the previous one did. I hope they can keep it going. It reminds me of like Fast X. Like, what were you thinking? It reminds me of Force Awakens. What were you thinking? You didn't plan the next one? You just told everybody it was going somewhere and hoped you'd find it along the way? Awful. I can't believe it. It's such a bummer. Best case scenario, they hold on to the magic. The third one comes out. It's great. And then we can all like buy the box set and remember them all fondly together, not having to wait this huge amount of time for no good reason. Just awful.
Yeah, it's really surprising that they just didn't have it ready to go or just start on it right away. Maybe it had to do with shifting things behind the scenes with different studio heads and things like that, but real disappointing. But I'm glad we at least have a date now.
Yeah. Hey, worth mentioning, at least we're getting 2 Spider-Verse movies between like Batman and Batman 2, right? Like the sooner they can get Rob Pattinson in the suit, the sooner we can get a Spider-Man movie, I guess. Speaking of getting back in the suit, Keanu Reeves is doing John Wick 5. Big announcement. Director Chad Stahelski's returning. This is coming hot off of Lionsgate putting out Ballerina with Ana de Armas in theaters this summer. But it's weird because I remember Keanu Reeves saying he's getting old and he can't really keep hanging in these flicks. What do you know about this, Andy?
So the Baba Yaga is back. We don't know any story details or how exactly he's coming back. John Wick died kind of in the end of 4, but maybe he didn't, or who knows? Maybe he faked his death as he did like 5 times in that series. So we don't know, but he is coming back with, again, Chad Stahelski, who's helmed the other 3, and also did a lot of fight choreography for things like the 4th Matrix movie. A couple of other John Wick announcements. They're going to be making an animated prequel film where John Wick fights all these bad dudes to basically get out of his contract with the High Table. And also Donnie Yen is going to be directing a spin-off film about Kane, the blind assassin that shows up in John Wick 4. He's going to get his own movie as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening in the John Wick verse. We don't quite have a date on this yet, but we knew that he'd be coming back. It's just too successful not to.
Late adopters to John Wick, if you have not kept up with this series, good news. I hadn't seen really any before the 4th one. I had taken a swing at the first one once or twice, but never really fell into it. Heard 2 was great. Heard 3 was weird. Walked into 4 blind. Went and saw it with Andy. Had a great time. So if you're thinking like 5 of these movies, I haven't seen any of them. What's this Ballerina show about? Good news. Lionsgate is looking to onboard you. They are growing this series. It's not like wrapping up. They want people to come in. John Wick 5 will be more of that energy. And I think 4 ends in a way that gives 5 a nice wide open. We can go in a lot of different directions, so it'll be solid. But like I said at the top, I remember reading that Keanu Reeves is like, man, I'm getting old, and like these things beat me up, and like I can only do so many more of these. So I think a little like Tom Holland doing Spider-Man, he's got an option for what, 2 or 3 more of these, and then he's probably out. He'll be in cameo status for the rest of his days. You know, he'll show up like Patrick Stewart in X-Men movies.
If they were smart, they would kind of make him some sort of mentor thing where he trains a new assassin, so he doesn't have to do all the kicking and punching and all the action stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Donnie Yen's older, and shoot, not only did he do great in the last one, he's getting his own project. So yeah, no, lots going on in the John Wick universe. Don't feel like it's too weird. You can't jump in. You can. If you're already a Wickhead, you're probably going to like it, man. Like, good news, more is coming. So hopefully solid. I know they had a weird run with that TV show that supposedly wasn't that awesome. Anyway, one more story from Cinemacon before I move on. Quentin Tarantino has a Once Upon a Time Hollywood follow-up coming up, but it's not going to be his almighty 10th feature. Nay, somebody else is going to direct it. Who's taking this on? Who's picking up where Tarantino left off?
In a really weird turn of events, so much so yesterday was April Fool's. Everyone thought this was fake. Everyone was like, oh, this is just they're pulling our leg, like lots of other kind of fake announcements that happened. But the great David Fincher is going to be taking on this project with Netflix, which means I guess that's where it will debut. Very strange thing. Some weird setup about the rights to this film. Universal, I believe, owns the rights to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the story, but Quentin Tarantino made a deal to where he still is able to own and use the characters. So it's not technically a sequel or a follow. It can't be related. But he can reuse some of the same characters, which is what he's going to do. It's going to be something in the 70s, and our boys Rick Dalton and Brad Pitt's character are back for another 70s adventure. No word on the story yet, but it's really strange now. Like, everyone thought this was fake yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't talk to anybody about it until April 2nd because I just couldn't. I saw Deadline report on it and Hollywood Reporter. All the big ones were all running with this one story. Like, this is a real thing. And I was like, no. David Fincher is not going to take over a Tarantino project starring Brad Pitt in something that is technically not a sequel because somebody else owns the rights. That all sounds insane. Perfect, complicated film head April Fool's fodder. And I got to wonder how the talent attached to this stuff feels when people get online and go, haha, funny joke, guys. Like, that's really cute. Hey, you got us, April Fools. But no, this appears to be a real thing. Whether or not it'll get made is another story entirely, because like Andy said, seems very complicated. But I'm a Fincher guy. I like David Fincher. I've liked David Fincher for a long time. I know since he's been attached to Netflix, a lot of his projects feel like they maybe have lacked the creative headwind that he used to have, because only some of his projects go to theaters limited time and he couldn't get Mindhunter season 3 made. But even still, they're funding him. They seem to have a good working relationship. So this seems great for him. Brad Pitt reportedly came to him with the script and said, hey, I think there's something here. We should work this out. I think he and Tarantino get along just fine. For all intents and purposes, this could be a cool project, but it definitely sounds lofty, I think, in its aspiration. Like, it just sounds so odd. Fincher's going to do a Tarantino thing, and Tarantino still isn't going to make his big almighty 10th. We'll see if he makes his last movie. Like, I don't know. It just sounds odd, but even still, I think this is the 5 biggest announcements from Cinemacon. Disney made some stuff, but not too much noise. Everybody kept it pretty buttoned down. But these are things I felt like we wanted to talk about. Any thoughts where we talk about the box office, Andy?
Well, again, the Tarantino story, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood follow-up, is so weird. It's like a Mad Libs exercise where it's like this incredible movie and this director and this writer, and these stars, but not working together. But on Netflix, it's just, again, everyone thought it was fake. Some exciting announcements. CinemaCon goes through Thursday, and so there's still going to be more announcements probably later tonight, and tomorrow we'll report on those next week.
I love it. All right, one more story before we get to Death of a Unicorn. We got to talk about the box office. Snow White is struggling. And I think if you've been listening to the show, you may not be that surprised by that. But you might be surprised to see that new Jason Statham action movie actually doing okay. What's going on at the box office, Andy?
So Jason Statham's a working man, his kind of working class beat him up Jason Statham vehicle, which he's kind of the same guy in every movie, but it works. Yeah. It works really well. Came in at $15 million, which was $1 million ahead of Snow White, which is real embarrassing for a big, expensive Disney, what was supposed to be a blockbuster and a very expensive movie. Dropped 65%, which is pretty steep in its second week. In third place was The Chosen at $11 million. The Woman in the Yard, which we didn't watch, but is a horror movie with Daniel Detweiler, came in just under $10 million, overperforming. The big surprise there. I've heard it's not great, but it is doing decent money. In fifth place, of course, Death of a Unicorn, which we're going to talk about shortly, at $5 million.
I love it. I'm surprised that Disney still isn't waving the white flag on Snow White. They are looking forward to rolling spring breaks across the country, right? Next few weeks, kids are going out of spring break. You're out all week, got nothing to do, send them to the theater, right? Might work out. I mean, shoot, their long game on Mufasa worked out great. Like, they clearly had a strategy that even I didn't understand. As for Working Man, I love that Statham is in this, like, I know he's always been an action guy, but it reminds me of like Liam Neeson doing Taken. And suddenly he becomes this, like, his whole career takes this turn into a streak of like semi-ironic, hyper-violent action features where he's a guy who's a little too old but can still hang. It's great. Like, and Beekeeper was self-aware enough that it knew what it was doing. I think Working Man is too. That's the same, functionally the same crew, same directors, same cast, right? So like, I don't know. Like, I think it's probably a good time. Haven't seen it. Can't say for sure. As for Death of a Unicorn, man, I was hoping it would do a little better, but we'll talk about it here in a second, I suppose.
I was going to say, so Working Man is apparently based on a novel, and apparently the movie takes itself a little bit more seriously than it maybe should in something like the Beekeeper.
Of course, it's about human trafficking, Andy. That's a very serious thing. Like, the movie poster says "human traffickers beware." Like, it says it right there. I mean, absolutely.
But that's not what Statham does.
I'm not joking around about it. No, of course not. No, I hear you. Yeah, I would believe it is a little bit more serious. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. I don't know. Beekeeper had this scene. Anyway, we got to talk about other movies. We spent way too long in the news. Are you ready to move on, Andy? Shoot, I'm sorry. I should get going.
I am.
All right. Andy's going to be taking the summary on this one. Andy, please take it away.
Death of a Unicorn